What's up, guys? Welcome back to the CMH Show. Hey, let's talk about the recent ChatGPT announcement that they are going to be allowing advertisement on their platforms going forward. Now, there's a lot of changes that are coming to this space, some that I agree with, some that I disagree with. This one is interesting for me because if you followed us for a while, you know that I had questions about this ChatGPT move to allow you to run ads, like Google ads or Facebook ads. And I'm going to compare the two here in a second about the integrity of what the core promise is of the platform. What I mean by that, running ads on Google, they only gave you an inclusion in the discovery process, meaning you search for something and then it removes the discovery part for you and it gives you a bunch of links for you to curate. You, as the user, have to decide which platform or which option rather is best suited for you. And they're like, hey, by the way, here's a sponsored option you can consider as well in your curation process. This is next gen beyond search engine with ChatGPT and others, these language models, in that they're promising you discovery plus curation. And so for me, you're looking more for an answer, just a bunch of information from that. That's the core promise of the platform. And so I thought they weren't going to do this, although it makes sense monetarily to do it, because of that core promise. Now it's going to feel compromised and people are going to challenge the potential integrity of the answer they got because now people have spent money for them to be recommended versus it just being something that was recommended because it's the best possible answer for you based off the prompt. But they have a massive revenue problem. I've been talking about this for a long time, by the way. I've been telling our clients, OpenAI and ChatGPT, OpenAI is the company, right? If people don't know that, have a massive revenue problem. Something like $83 million $83 million a month. And I think their losses are going to be like in the billions as of 2029. Like there's not a foreseeable future. They're burning through VC capital. If those numbers might not be accurate, but it's a lot. They're burning a lot of capital here and they're basically burning through VC money. A lot of the tech companies do that. So thinking back about like the Ubers, the WeWorks, like they did the same thing and then they had to get smart. So they were focusing on adoption, massive adoption, and then figuring out the revenue part. That's just how the tech bros roll. That's just what they do. And it's a massive hedging of a bet. So they want to get there first, plant their flag, and build a revenue model because they make it an indispensable part of your life. That's kind of the core. That's kind of the core essence of what they're trying to accomplish here. But all that to say, we shall see. But the bottom line is, with ChatGPT, is definitely building revenue models is going to be imperative for them to stop the bleeding and to start building more usability and adoption. And so let me break down to you why I think, relating it to why it matters to you, why I think this is going to be so powerful for you, the business owner, and why I think this is actually going to be the biggest advertising opportunity since the heyday of what Facebook ads were, right? Facebook ads are still great and people still make money with them. We still make money with them, but it's lost its luster. And I'm going to explain why here in a second and why now I think the ChatGPT or language model ads like this are actually going to be the next big frontier of opportunity, not just for recommendations organically, but like I said, with running ads. So let's talk about Google, right? So here are the core like reasons that it works super well. It was intent-based. So you were looking for something and then you would rank on based off of your search. Well, you would rank organically, but also your paid advertisement links would pop up based off of the user's intent, meaning their search. What are they searching for? I'm looking for bone broth protein powder. Well, then they're going to show you a list of recommended based off of the search result, but also based off of what someone paid for in terms of positioning, right? We all know that. We've seen that a million times. The search engine component. And what do I mean by that? You woke up probably and didn't say to yourself, I got to stop spending so much time on Google. Like it's a function, it's a utility in your life, not an accessory that's viewed as a distraction or like an entertainment outlet. So that's the problem with social media, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second here, is social media is optional. Now, I'm not saying that people don't get on every day because they do, but no one has ever said, man, I need to stop spending so much time on Google. They have said, I need to stop spending so much time on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. Because again, the psychology behind it is this is a utility in my life that I couldn't even function without. Imagine your life without a search engine like Google versus imagine your life without social media. In fact, you may actually be relieved that I said imagine your life without social media. You would never say that about Google. So the user base is always going to be there, right? For Google, like they're the king of search. They have been for a long time, and it's not something that's viewed. It doesn't have a negative connotation with usability. It just doesn't. So that leads to massive, massive, massive volume. It is a huge, the amount of traffic that they get is just, it's been unbelievable. And this has been the case for a long time. However, they do not have detailed targeting and therefore it's expensive, right? You're competing off of broad strokes in terms of search queries. And therefore, it's expensive because of all of the previously referenced things. It's a massive utility that people use every day. Therefore, there's a lot of volume. And so when you're competing on ads, it's going to be expensive because you can only compete in the auction block on broad stroke key terms. So you could get really nuanced with like long tail keywords and stuff like that, using tools like Uber Suggest. But by and large, the expectation was that it's going to be far more expensive. However, it's your low hanging fruit because of the intentionality behind the search. So if you're a local service-based business owner, you'll pay $50, maybe not, that's an exaggeration, but you'll pay $15 a click maybe if you've got a multi-$1,000 customer. Because again, you're expecting that it's going to be expensive, right? Now the beauty and why I always like holistically using both Google for low-hanging fruit, but also pattern interrupts with social media ads, specifically Facebook. It's still the king of ads in most cases. I would say TikTok for low ticket merch, stuff like that is probably the way to go. But for, services, info products, coaching, a lot of expert businesses, service providers, like Facebook is still going to be king when it comes to ads. And when I say Facebook, I'm referencing the Meta platform specifically. So Facebook and Instagram, with Facebook still taking an edge, believe it or not. So the hallmark of what changed the game and why Google launched Google Plus back in the day, you probably don't remember that, was because of this right here. The detailed targeting for Facebook changed the game, because what it allowed you to do was say, this is what my person looks like. And then Facebook could follow you all over the web, right? They could follow you all over the place and see and basically build a profile around you, not just with what you did on platform, which the average person in the heyday of Facebook was spending about 45 minutes a day on platform, but then they could follow you around the web and figure out who you are, what you buy, what you look at, stuff like that. And then they knew who you were. In fact, the CIA admitted at one point that Facebook had more information on you than they did. That's crazy, right? So that was the big hallmark. That's why the costs were so inexpensive. I'm talking about in a minute. Relatively speaking, the costs were so inexpensive because we could operate in little silos and niches where they would show you ads that were relevant for you, where Google had to rely on your search to determine, right? So it was more broad strokes versus very detailed. And this really rewarded people that knew their audiences with a very niche offering. You could get, at one point we were getting like $7 sales to a front end. It's just ridiculous. Sales, not leads, not clicks, sales to front end offers. And that was the heyday of what Facebook ads provided. Now, it's non-intent based. So you're talking about pattern interrupt. That's difficult. People get on Google because they're looking for something specifically. They're looking for an answer for something specifically. It's kind of the core promise now of ChatGPT and others, which we're going to talk about. This is non-intent based. No one logged into Facebook to go buy a course. No one logged into Facebook to go shopping for jewelry. But you probably looked up on Google places when you wanted to do those things. So it really didn't tap into that, meaning you had to have something that would interrupt pattern, and that required you to have some degree of marketing knowledge to be able to interface in a way where you didn't actually know that people were looking for something. You had to kind of like get them quickly to the point that you needed to get them to make a sale on something, right? Because they're there to watch cat videos. They're there to laugh at reels. They're there to post that they're, flying somewhere and they're traveling so they want to flex on their friends and show pictures and, from the plane window. Right? Like that's, so the interrupt was difficult around that. And that's where you had to get really smart with your creatives. Now, massive user base, I think at one point half the planet, so they shared that, massive user base on both. However, we'll talk about this in a second, massive user base, but platform relevancy, right? Again, we'll get there in a second. Inexpensive relative to what Google entailed. Why? Because you could operate in those really detailed niches with that targeting. Right? So very inexpensive, relatively speaking. I say relative because I know people are like, Facebook ads are expensive. Relative to what they are with search-based intent, it is not expensive at all. In fact, it's going to be a fraction. However, as mentioned, platform relevance, it's aged out. So Facebook has become something that the quote boomers use, and it's not something that the kids are using. In fact, if you're in the 35 plus demo with what you sell, Facebook's still going to be king. If you're under that, and definitely under 30 or under 28, it's going to be difficult. They may have a Facebook account, but they never log into it. So I would imagine the time spent for that demographic is very low. However, there is a demographic and an argument to be made for like 35 to 60, where you're probably still going to be Facebook ads are going to be extremely beneficial for you, right? However, obviously each one of these have their negatives, right? The non-intention based, the platform has to remain relevant. It's not Google. You don't need Facebook. Right? And people view it that way. It's an optional addition to their lives, like I mentioned. This is a utility. This is an optional thing in people's minds, right? Now, let's talk about the power of why I think ChatGPT is going to be with ads is going to be the biggest opportunity since these early heydays, and probably the next frontier of what advertisement looks like for businesses of all sorts, right? So it has the intention based. Why? Because people get on there to ask a prompt similar a la to Google. Now, though, it's not giving you a list of potential links that you have to curate. It's done that for you. So if you're in something like professional services, legal, financial, like health, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a few lawsuits, a la the coffee's too hot McDonald's situation, where what you're going to see is ChatGPT and others are going to be incentivized to start playing nicer with creators. One, from a data gathering standpoint, they need to play nicer with creators, because if people stop producing content because ChatGPT has all the answers anyways, what's the point of creating content, right? And then ChatGPT doesn't have data to crawl. These are hyper crawl machines. This is not generative AI. This is forgery at scale. That's the joke. But these just crawl data at a ridiculous rate and put together, quote, answers for you, right? So they're going to have to start rewarding people on an organic basis anyways, but then you're talking about legal mitigation of exposure. And so they're already going to start recommending people like that anyways. And if you're dynamic, meaning you have some expertise behind what you do, it's going to start recommending you regardless, because again, they have to play nice. But either way, the intention-based aspect, similar to Google, is going to be there. In addition to the fact that it's going to have that massive user base because of this being viewed as utility. ChatGPT is becoming an indispensable utility in your life. It's not Facebook where it's viewed as optional. It's I live my life on this thing, and anytime I have a question, you're basically a cyborg. You reach for your phone. I mean, these things are basically connected to us. And one of the main core functions now that you have as a extended cyborg is that you're going to use tools like ChatGPT, right? Detailed targeting. Again, it's going to know, ChatGPT knows who you are. It saves these conversations, right? Now, similar to Meta platforms, right? It's going to have that detailed targeting about you. Google doesn't have that. That's why they tried to launch Google+. They wanted this data because they knew that detailed targeting that Facebook was gathering was something they didn't have. They had to wait for your intention-based search, and they knew that was going to drive the cost. Every time you use chat, it's building a profile. It's like an agent, even if you use a different thread, it's like an agent handing over notes about previous threads. So it's not going to remember everything yet, but that's coming, where literally you'll be able to start a new thread and it'll have that persistency where it will literally know everything that you've ever talked to ChatGPT about. So you're building much similar to what Facebook used to do. You're building this profile and you're sharing more details than you did here. Why? Because it's private. So you'll go into all of your, people treat ChatGPT like a therapist, which is kind of scary. They'll share details that they would never put out publicly. And so there was a public privacy concern about how you behaved on Facebook versus how you're going to behave with chat, meaning the detailed targeting is going to be outrageous what chat's going to know about you. Again, be careful what you say. This is more of a Chris warning than it is like a, platform benefit situation here, but just be careful because it is saving this data. So massive volume, a la massive adoption, utility, insane amount of use, growing by the minute, right? Which leads to, again, we talked about massive user base. So when you layer all these together, what you're going to get is the inexpensive relative to Google, because you're literally, it's like if Meta and Google ads had a baby, it's ChatGPT ads. That's basically the equivalence of what this is going to be. And so what you'll find is that people that are going through different prompt requests, they're going to be doing research and engaging with the platform as utility, but they're going to have the same detailed targeting, I would say enhanced detailed targeting that Facebook's going to have on you, which is going to allow it to show you ads that are catered specifically for you based off of an entire history of usage, which again is where Facebook made its heyday, right? Or payday rather, more specifically, was knowing that level of details about you specifically to provide advertisers with that detailed targeting. So my expectation is that you're going to see some of the best ad costs you've ever seen. And this is going to become an area where you're going to invest heavily in paid advertisement in addition to putting out massive amounts of content, because they're going to start rewarding users that put out content, specifically as these language models can start crawling video and social media and all things around the web. They're going to start rewarding you because they need that data. This whole business model is built on data and selling that, right? In the form right now of usability, but then also in terms of recommendations based off of paid or building custom GPT models and such, right? So these are going to be the core aspects that drive both their revenue model, but also drive their data gathering, which is problematic, specifically when you think about somebody like Elon Musk, who bought X for why? Why did he spend $44 billion on X? He was playing 5D chess. He knew it was data, because now people are posting every second of every day. There's thousands, if not millions of posts every single day. And what that is allowing them to do is be able to cut their costs substantially, because all that data gathering is right there in-house with the X platform. So again, I'm not just shilling Elon. It was actually brilliant. I would say that even if I wasn't a fan of Elon, because it was a brilliant move. But this is the opportunity for you guys. In the meantime, what I would say is build as much content as you can. I would say long form. I'm going to talk in an upcoming video about the power of what these new AI driven algorithms are going to do, because what you're going to see is you're going to see these algorithms deciding now not just on the size of your audience, but the quality of your content, again, detailed to who specifically that'll resonate with. Because the battle has now become getting people to use platforms, meaning social media. What is going to make you use X over TikTok? What's making you choose TikTok over Instagram? It's the relevancy of your scroll, the things that are hitting you that are most relevant to your specific person. So there's a huge argument to be made about speaking to your person directly, because these algorithms are going to get so advanced, they'll find your person. So in the meantime, just dial in your messaging, speak with clarity to who that person is, who your person is, what your offer does for them. And then when the time comes, you're already going to, ChatGPT and others are going to have an understanding of who you are. And then when you run ads, it's already going to be even more dialed in about who those people are, because it's going to have that general understanding of who that's best suited for, which is only going to drive your costs even lower. So, and I think this is going to be wide enough and specific enough to keep the costs low. I think you're going to get maybe even better than what original heyday of Facebook ad costs were. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. I think your costs are going to be back like 2016 to 2018 heyday of Facebook ads. I think that's what ChatGPT ads are going to cost, if not lower, because it has all of these characteristics that allow for efficiency of results, efficiency of the recommendations, paid recommendations, but also the costs associated with that deep, detailed targeting. So I think you layer those two together, and I think you're going to see literally the best advertising opportunity we've seen in a long, long time. So hope that was beneficial. I will hedge my bet on that. Drop in the comments if you guys want to hear more on this topic, or if you're curious to hear what I have to say about what X just announced. I kind of teased it a little bit with the new AI algorithms kind of dictating what content should be shown to whom versus size of audience. Hashtags, those were all like, those are archaic now. What's happening, what's coming, and what's happening in the marketplace with AI dictating that is going to be just as big of a game changer. So if you want to hear more on that, maybe I'll do that in an upcoming episode. But for now, that's what I have for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next one.